Hey again, everybody. This is Andy, another sports card video. Hope everybody's doing well. So I wanted to sit down and do a quick video today. It's a beautiful sunny Sunday here in New Jersey. Just got back from the card show, Garfield, New Jersey, about 40 miles from my house. Met a couple of other YouTube content creators there. I'm going to cut away real quick to a video that I made while I was at the show. All right, so here with Sammy Thunder, who's gracious enough to sign my card for me. He's one of my inspirations, so I appreciate it, Sammy. Thank you.
Of course. Hopefully I leave room for everybody else. Eventually. Yeah, maybe I should have done that.
Oh, it's perfect. Thank you, Sammy, so much, man. It's really nice to meet you.
Of course, pleasure to meet you, Andy.
Take care. So you can see that I was kind enough to get Mr. Sammy's autograph today. Really appreciate Sammy. What a wonderful gentleman, a very kind person. Here's the card. Thank you so much, Sammy. It was a pleasure. I met him as well as Mookie Chilson. They were both at the show today. This was great. It was a great experience, and I got to tell you, I was big fan of both of their channels. They're very inspirational and very fun to watch. So going to continue to support them. Thank you so much, folks. But it was also great to just meet you in person. This was my first YouTube-driven sports card meeting. So people that I had met or followed on YouTube, it actually turned into an actual chance meeting at a location. So that's great. We actually talked a little bit while we were there. Obviously, I bought some cards, and I'll show those at the end of the video. But really, the key thing was, we had conversations about Jeff Wilson's video recently, where he's talking about the most important part about buying cards for investments is the grade, and you should buy the card, not buy the grade, not the card, which obviously has created a lot of conversation. I hadn't actually seen the video prior to going to the show. But I did watch it when I got back and kind of sat through the half hour or so of him talking, which got me to thinking about the idea of influencers in the hobby and the difference between influencers and those who provide inspiration. So obviously, Mr. Wilson had, his opinion about, and in his video, he used the word I quite a bit. He said, I did this, I did the research, I reviewed the numbers, I've experienced this, and he then told basically, on his channel, what he says you should do, trying to influence your behavior and your money spending habits, basically changing what you physically do by just his will and his channel. On the other side of the coin, I think more importantly is inspiration. Now, certainly influencers, I respect everybody's right to have a voice, and I certainly think YouTube is great for a place where people can go and talk about stuff or give their opinion. It's sort of like a personal log type of thing. But I think inspiration is something I really value more than influence. Inspiration to me is where the person providing the inspiration is more involved with the person receiving the inspiration from a value side, from a value perspective. Inspiration is about trying to help somebody make a discovery for themselves that brings them to a more elevated place or a different place. It's really about helping that person on their journey to where they're trying to get, rather than telling them the steps how to get there. It's helping them to find their own path forward. And that's why I think inspiration is very valuable. And that's also, what I want to talk about, because I think in our hobby, there's a lot of places to get inspiration. I'm going to talk a little bit about my past and kind of go into where I got inspired to be a card collector and what keeps me inspired still. So my story of card collecting starts in the year 1975. And I remember it quite well because how could you forget that set, right? It's pretty remarkable in its design and unforgettable in its colors. My father had an office at the little farm that I lived, and every once in a while Dad would break open his drawer and give me some pocket change, and I'd run down to the little mini mart that was down the street about a mile or two away, a little place called Alice's, even though that really wasn't the name. We called it that because Alice ran the place. and I'd buy some packs of cards. So in 1975, I ran down there and I bought some baseball cards, and I ran back home with them and put them in my little brown bag next to the pool. And the wind blew them over, and all the cards went flying into the pool. Well, my mother rescued the cards with her little strainer scooper thing and put them on the concrete slab there by the pool to dry. And I remember seeing them all twist and turn like potato chips drying in the sun. But it was a good memory, and I certainly learned a lot about where to store your cards. Certainly don't store your cards upwind from the pool. Bad idea. So anyway, I want to show a couple of my cards from my youth. And the reason why I know they're mine is because my mother, and here's one, desiring to keep the cards, her kids from squabbling, because my sister also bought baseball cards that year. She wrote her initials on the back, and there's an A. That's one of my cards. Here's another A. So I'll always know that these were some of my original cards that survived the pool because she wrote on them. There's another A. And last is, these are just the 4 that I found. This one's got a K on the back, which means it was my sister's card, but either she gave it to me or I traded her for it or something. But anyway, there's a K card. Also in 1975, I got my hands on some surgical scalpels and made this custom die-cut card of Richie Allen, which I'm sure is a pretty much one of a kind. It actually survived all these years, but this is what happens when you're bored and you've got baseball cards as a child. So unfortunately, I bought cards 75, 76. Unfortunately, my father passed away just a few years after this. He was not even out of his 30s. And my mother took over running his business. He had gone into truck driving or a trucking company. He owned a farm. He worked for the state. He had a lot of things going on. Mom kept it all together. She raised the family. But a few years after he passed away, she had a boyfriend, I guess, or a friend. I think they were more friends, but they ended up getting married. His name was John. Now John was an interesting character. We were good friends. Obviously, my mother called him a lifelong bachelor, even though he ended up getting married to her and having 3 stepchildren. He would definitely had that, I'm a bachelor mentality, for whatever that's worth. But John was a baseball fan. He tried to be an umpire in the Pacific Coast League in the 60s and early 70s and gave it up at some point. I guess either he ran into some trouble or he couldn't make it work or whatever it was. But there's his business card. I actually still have that from when he was an umpire. And later on in his life, he umpired baseball at the local high schools and did referee at the football games. He just liked to officiate, so that's what he did. So John, as a baseball fan, was a Mets fan, so he kind of introduced me to the Mets. And one of the ways he did that was he gave me one of his treasures. So this is kind of still see it, an official Pacific Coast League baseball. On this side of the baseball, barely legible, is an autograph. And it says, "Best wishes, Tom Seaver." So I, of course, got these balls from my stepdad and didn't really think about the autographs too much. Took it outside and played catch with it. So much so that it has this nice, worn, faded look to it. But I did actually, take this out and pull the Sandlot on it, right? I played with the Tom Seaver autographed baseball. But anyway, so he gave this to me. This must have been, a really thoughtful gift from him, and it really heartfelt because obviously, he was a big Met fan, and this was pretty unique. It was a ball from when he was an umpire, and it contained one of his favorite players' autographs on it. So I still have it, even though I abused it as a child. It's very important to me. So he inspired me to be a Mets fan, from which I will never forgive him. No, just kidding. So he also liked to collect cards, even though he didn't really have any when I met him. Later on in his life, in the early 80s, I guess, or mid 80s, he started to buy them again. He had the 55 top set. He had a 52 Bowman set, 59 top set. He used to go to card like auctions. There was a place that would have like an auction, and they would have lots, and you go there and you could bid on. And he would buy these big giant boxes full of like assorted cards, and mostly commons. And I guess the stuff as they were going through and they were pulling out the stars to sell, they would throw everything else in the box, and he would buy them. So he built these sets, and he had boxes and boxes and boxes. But I started to collect cards as well because of that, and didn't really know how to collect. So John bought me this book. This is the Great American Baseball Card Flipping, Trading, and Bubblegum book, published in 1973. And the authors published this book because they were, as young people, went to their library and said, hey, let me see a book about baseball cards. And the librarian says, there are none. So they wrote one. And if you've never read the book, it's very charming. It's about their experiences growing up in the 50s and 60s, as card collectors, about baseball lovers. And it talks about a trip they took to the Topps Company in 1972 or 73, and their mother throwing out their cards and so forth. So it's a lot of fun to read. And it was actually, something I could understand at 14 or 15, whatever I was. But the true inspiration from this book came in this section right here called Profiles. So the Profiles section is this section where there are pictures of baseball cards, and there are little narratives talking about what the authors remember about the player, sometimes flattering, like in the case of the Ted Williams card, and sometimes not. And there's maybe 200 cards in this book. So John says, why don't you collect the cards in the book? So I did. So I would go to like the flea markets and buy the cards. If I got a card of the player, I would put a slash through it like I did right here. If I got a card of the player and the exact card from that year, I would put a check mark. So this card here, I had both the card and the player and the actual card. So it was a fun way to collect cards, and there's not many stars in this book, but there are a lot of cool vintage cards, and it really, introduced me to the different designs, the different years. I mean, it's chock full of good card goodness. So that was a great inspiration for me, because now I had something that I could collect, and most of those cards I could afford because they weren't, expensive back then. I also bought at the local Myers toy shop this Beckett #1. And Dr. Beckett talks about the hobby as a serious adult thing in many ways, right? I don't know if you've ever seen this version of the book, but this is the official #1, and here's there's colored pictures in there, and it talks about scarcity and grading and how to, how to grade your cards themselves, like how to give them a grade, not actual grading, but he also talks about the prices getting crazy, out of control, how to locate and find cards. There's a lot of good practical information in here. But I want to jump to the 1952 Topps set, because I believe this is one of the most interesting parts of the book. So if you look at the 1952 Topps set, and you jump to card number 407, which is the Eddie Matthews rookie card, you can buy a pristine mint card. They call it mint. They don't have pristine here. They call it mint for $160. For a very good to X, it's $120, and for a fair, it's about $40. Ironically enough, the card that's almost the same value is the number 399 Jim Dickey, which is $140 for a mint. If you had $500, you could buy a mint version of the Mickey Mantle card. If you had $375, you could buy a very good to excellent version of the card. The Roy Campanella card was $140. Jackie Robinson was $160. These are all mint prices. So I thought that was great, because here was a way where I could budget my card spending, and I certainly could find dealers, like there's advertisements on the front and back and all through it. You could see how well loved this book was. So a few years later, I got my hands on one of these, and this is a little pocket guide. And what this is the 1982 official price guide to baseball cards. But really what it is a checklist. And they've got some pricing in there, some basic pricing. But it allowed me to carry this around in my back pocket with my little tough skin jeans and actually start to collect and put the sets together. So this was when I really began trying to complete sets. And what I liked about this little book, and I actually have a couple of copies, was they had tiny little baseball cards on the front. So if I couldn't afford the card, I would cut it out with my little scalpel again. Here I go, being a surgeon. So I had tiny little versions of the cards that I could not afford. But anyway, so that was a lot of fun, and I actually have one here that I never even used. It's a pristine mint version of the book, aside from being my name written on the top there. So yeah, maybe I'll use this at some point to start collecting sets again from the 70s. But anyway, so those are some of my inspirational tidbits from my youth. John passed away a few years ago, and him and my mother. So I guess what I should say is the part of the story that's really interesting to me is the late 80s. For a while, I was selling cards a little bit at shows just to make money to get through college, and John was doing the same. But in the late 80s, my mother and him decided they wanted to get rid of the trucking company, they wanted to stop farming, and they wanted to open up a travel agency. So to fund the investment or come up with the capital needed to buy a location, to pay for all the licensing and all the fees, John sold his baseball card collection, everything from top to bottom. The entire thing was gone. He sold it at one big swoop. I guess over a few months he sold it, but basically all at once to come up with money so him and my mother could start this travel agency. So huge sacrifice to John, from John for this. And it just, guys, shows you, inspiration in life, is also about sacrifice sometimes too. With John's little selfless act to help my mother and him, get to be able to travel, because as travel agents, they traveled quite a bit and they spent time together. He really cared about the cards, but he gave them up for his wife, really. So these are the kind of stories that you hear in the hobby quite often, and those are the ones to me that really matter. So anyway, without getting too far off subject, let me jump to my pickups for today, and I'll run through them. I got this really cool 1960 Veda Pinson. I got this, I guess this is a 69. It's a game, but I don't have any of these cards, so I thought they were really cool. I got some football ones, but I don't have any baseball ones, ironically enough. I don't have many deckled edges. I've got the Clemente, and now I've got the Rod Carew. Those are cool. I picked up this Roy McMillan card, which I think this is my second 53 Bowman. They're just cool looking cards. I just like the image. I did check the back. Mookie asked me to look. No, it's not a stat back. Sorry. I mean, I could always fill it in for you, Mookie. But 1954 Bowman set. I'm about 15 or 18 cards away. This one is one of the ones I needed. And then I have some 55 Bowman cards. Here's a Bob Feller. Beautiful card. Here's a umpire named Hal Dixon. Here's the Scooter card, Phil Rizzuto. And the Eddie Matthews card. And 4 more towards my set. I think I'm 20-something cards away from finishing that one. That was my stepdad John's favorite set, by the way, was the 55 Bowman set. Although he never collected it as a collector, he did have a few hidden in a drawer after he passed away. We found them. Anyway, folks, that's my video for today. Those are my card collection. Thank you so much for giving me your time, for your comments, for your likes, for following my channel. I can't tell you how much I appreciate each and every one of you. I really hope you have a great weekend. Stay healthy, stay well, and stay in touch, folks. Thank you so much.